Hey, what's up? This is Alchemist Camp, where we learn Elixir and the Phoenix framework by building things. Today, we're going to build a content management system onto a Phoenix site. It's a fairly basic site, but if you'd like to see how it was built up to what we have here, just go back a few videos and it's all there. This content management system is going to require many-to-many relations and more complex schemas than we've used up to this point. And also a bit of work in the context in order to make helpers so that it's easy to use these more complex schemas. So this is going to have articles, and it's going to have episodes, and it's going to have resource links, and there will be topics. And any type of content will be taggable by any topic. And furthermore, we'll set it up in such a way that we can add more functionality to all content types in unison. For example, if we add the concept of a view count, then it should apply to articles and to resource links and to episodes in the same way. And of course, the big thing is going to be making this work in such a way that it's not a hassle to deal with this more complex schema. So let's have a quick look. These are the controllers that we're going to need. The new ones will be episodes, articles, and resources, which are all kinds of entities which will not have controllers. And then there will be topics. All of these things will go into a content context. The users and passwords, those things are already done in accounts. Analytics is where events are handled, and then other is kind of a catch-all. So going down to here, we can see I've made a plan to make entities have a few Boolean attributes. They can be published or not. For example, if an article is not published, then normal users would not be able to see it. It's going to require a login or not, and it could be premium content or not. And I'll put the view count on entities, so it will apply to any type of entity as we discussed. The entity types are articles, episodes, and resource pages, as I mentioned before. Articles are the simplest. They just have a title, slug, which is basically like a pretty URL, and content, which is the primary part of it, and then an entity ID, which links it to some entity. Resource pages are the same, except they also have a resource URL, and episodes are the same, except they have a video URL and a length. That way it'll be possible to organize them based on how long they are. And topics just have text, so the text might be Phoenix 1.6 or ecto or something like that. Any kind of topic that you could tag things with. Then we'll have a couple of join tables, one to join topics and entities together. This is basically tags. And then another one to join entities and likes together, or to join entities and users together when a user likes an entity. And we also have plans, and we're not going to do this one today, but basically this will be setting it up so that certain content is only accessible to people with certain subscription plans. And at least early on, there aren't going to be too many kinds of subscription plans. That's enough of an overview. Let's get coding. All right, we'll start by checking these problems. Oh, just mark down lint. Okay. We'll start with our generators. So we'll mix Phoenix gen schema content.entity, and there is no content context yet, but it'll create the folder for us. Is published, that's a Boolean. Is premium, is also a Boolean, and so is requires login. And we'll add a view count as well. View count is an integer, and we'll have to set a default for that in a moment. Need a module name and the plural. Oh, right. Content.entity, and the plural of that, i.e. the table name, is going to be entities. All right, so that's made a schema and a migration for us. Now let's also create a context. So we'll do that with mix phoenix.gen.context. And we'll pass it the name of the context, which is content, then the name of the schema, which is entity, then the plural, and all the rest of the stuff could stay the same. And yes, yes, okay. And let's look at that really quickly. So we now have an entity schema, which is good. Our integer, we want to add a default to, default 0. That's because everything will have 0 views when it's first created. And then our content, we just have a bunch of helper functions for dealing with the database with our entity context. And we'll be adding more to this with generators as we go on. Then we'll use a different generator, and this one is gen.html. This is kind of like the scaffold generator from Rails. It'll make your controllers, it'll make your templates, it'll make your view, it'll make the schema, it'll basically do all the things. And article, the plural of that is articles, and articles of titles, which are strings, slugs, which are strings, content, which is longer form text, and an entity ID that references entities. And we can see that this context for our content now also includes a section for articles. So we have helpers to list articles, get articles, create articles, update them, delete them, and get a change set. And we're going to do the same thing as we did for articles, except for episodes. That's because they're basically just like articles, except they have a little bit more info. So episodes, the plural, episode, the plural is episodes. And episodes have what articles have. And in addition, they also have seconds long, which says how long they are. Let's put that after the text. Seconds long, and that's an integer. And they also have a video URL, and that's just a string. And now we have additional information in this context for our episodes. And is there anything we need to change in these? Yes, there is. We'll do that in a moment, because we're going to have one more schema, which is also very similar, and that is resource pages. So this will be resource and resources, and it won't have seconds long, it won't have a video URL, but it will have a normal URL. And other than that, it's just like the articles. Right, that's good. In our article, we correctly have an entity ID here, but we actually want to set up a belongs to relationship, have this belong to an entity. That way we can get the information from the entity when we're looking at an article. So belongs to is a command for that, and it will assume an ID here. So we just say belongs to entity, and then we need to pass it the entity schema, which we don't have aliased in this context, so we're going to add it here. I shouldn't use the word context anymore now that it has a real meaning. It's not aliased in this module. Entity, there we go. And we're going to want to do this exact same thing in the other two similar schemas. Before we do that, let's add an entity ID to the attributes that are being cast in our change set. That way, if we pass a change set and entity ID, it'll update it. An article episode is going to be the same deal. Change this field into a belongs to, and the Phoenix formatter, or the Elixir formatter from 1.6 is what's wrapping this in parentheses there. This one's really long, so we'll actually shorten this a little bit by using a different syntax. The W sigil makes a list of words, So instead of needing to put atoms between each of these, we can just do this. Just have a space between them, and then close the parentheses as so, and we have a list of words. Put an A at the end, it'll be a list of atoms, but ecto doesn't really care if you give it a list of atoms or a list of strings, so we'll just do that. Then resources are also going to have a belongs to and an entity ID. And I did forget to do this in the previous schema. I'll have to go back and do that. Entity. Okay, so that's alias available in this module, and we've got to make entities available here too, because we're using it. Okay, so far so good. Now let's add a topic. And topics are going to be super simple. They're just going to be in the context, and they'll be called topic, and topics is the plural, and they will just have one field, which is text. Our topic here is very simple. All right, then we'll go check out the migrations and see if we need to change anything there. We should also put a default 0 in our migration for our entities, and then looks good, but we're also going to want to use a unique index on the slug. And the reason for that is because the slug is how we're going to be looking them up. Slug is going to be the URL for these, so we need to be able to do that quickly. And they also have to be unique, because if they're not, we could somehow make one route correspond to 2 articles, and that wouldn't be any good. And got to do the same thing for episodes. And we've got to do the same for resources. That's everything except the join tables. So let's update the router and then fire it up. Right, here is our router, and we've got log in, log out, sign up, the home page, sessions controller there, and users. So we'll paste in these other routes, and notice we have articles, we have episodes, and we have resources, but we do not have one for entities. That's because entities are just to power these other things. And the topics controller is there. That's fine. We can add to that manually. Migrate, and then we should be able to start up the server. It already is started, so we'll just recompile to make sure we get all those new schemas. Homepage is still okay. I've previously created an episode, so I'm just going to go back and resubmit the same form. The awesome episode, content, seconds long, YouTube, all right. And we'll look at the index of all episodes. That seems okay. Now let's see if we've got resources and articles too. We'll make a new resource, and one resource that would definitely go on the site eventually would be the Elixir forum. Slug will be forum, and the content will be, this is a wonderful place where kind and helpful people talk about Elixir. And the URL is going to copy that in. All right. So we've got a resource. We have a resource index. Excellent. Articles is also looking good. I'm getting a little tired here, so that's articles, episodes, and resource links all working. Now let's make a topic or two. Topics. And what should a topic be? It'll be pattern matching. And we'll make another one. OTP. Okay, good deal. Now let's go to episodes and hook everything up. I'm going to paste in a new index page for our episodes that I like a little bit more. It's essentially the same thing. I've just added a couple classes, like making this the primary color unless it's hovered, and there's no show over here anymore. Now it's just a link to the episode, and the YouTube link turned into a link, and the slug is no longer displayed. Seconds have been renamed to length. So pretty straightforward stuff. And I have another page for the show. Once again, it's a bit of a styling update. Got some bootstrap classes in here. The content part is just a raw episode content. That will probably turn into Markdown at some point. Then I added share buttons for Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. And it's basically the simplest kind of thing you could possibly do. And some classes for Font Awesome. I've got an admin user section down here, and it'll show whether if the episode is published or not, which comes from the episode's entity that is published, and then some discus comments at the bottom, and that is about it for now. And this will not work with what we have now, and that's because this episode doesn't have an entity, even though every episode should have an entity. So that's basically our next task. We've got to add the entity to the episode, and then we've got to make it so that new episodes always have an entity. So first, we'll just go into IEX and fix this one, and then we'll add that logic to the content. So we'll alias campsite.content to get all those helpers from that context that we generated. Now we can pretty easily fetch what we need from the database. So we'll look at all of the episodes first. Content.list episodes. There's one episode. Then we can create an entity, and it's going to return an OK. So we'll do it this way. OK and ent1 equals content.create entity. All right, that's pretty much what we expected, and now we can update the episode with this entity's ID. So content.update episode ep1, and we'll pass it a hash with the information that we want to change. Entity ID of 1. Oh, we haven't assigned that to a variable yet. So we'll say episode 1 equals content.get episode 1. And now content.update ep1 with entity ID equals to 1. Done. And if we if we list the entities, and if we list the episodes again, notice we do not, entity ID did not update. Must be a mistake in the episode schema. There is, because I changed this to a word list syntax so there would be room, but I didn't actually add the entity ID. TID, all right, save that. We'll have to recompile. Good deal. Now let's list the episodes. Still hasn't changed what's there, but we have to do the update again. Now the update worked. Now we have an entity ID of 1, and now we can list the episodes, and we can see, there we go. Now we can list the episode information, and we see entity ID 1, entity is not loaded. That's because we don't have a preload. But if we get a single episode, we definitely want the entity to preload. And it does not. So let's change that. So let's find get episode, and then every time we get an episode, we're going to use repo.preload to load all of the entity structure into that episode. And furthermore, when we create an episode, we want to create an entity first. We'll do that just like we did in IEX. So, okay, entity equals create entity. And then in the change set, we're also going to need the entity ID. We'll use map.put to add that entity ID to the attributes. Entity ID and entity.id to get that from this entity we just created. Then while we're here, let's also go to update episode and add in the entity change set. So ecto.changeset.cast ASOC, which is the same thing we used when we were doing the login system in a previous video. Entity with entity.changeset/2. So this will just add exactly whatever is in the entity change set. And delete does not change. The change set doesn't change. Okay. So now let's reload, recompile, and now let's get an episode. You can see with this episode, it does have the entity content preloaded and stuffed in there. Yay, it loads, and so does our little, oh, our discus embed didn't work. That's probably because it's on localhost, so not too worried about it at this point. Let's just delete all of that, and this should be single episode page. Okay, it's a work in progress. We'll leave it as is for now and go back to the index. Now the next task is to get some topics, and this is not as easy as the other stuff we've done. We're gonna have to make some join tables and set up some many-to-many relations. Let's go to our other shell. We're gonna make a new schema called EntityTopic, which is going to join entities, aka content, with topics. And that's basically what a tag is. It connects some piece of content with some topic. So mix phoenix.gen.schema. We don't want HTML for this. This is just for plumbing, essentially. Content.EntityTopic, and the plural is going to be entity topics, and it's going to have an entity ID that references entities, and topic ID that references topics. And before we run that migration, we're going to make another one that's almost identical, and this one is going to be between entities and users. So we'll have a user ID that references users, and we'll call this entity likes. That was a mistake because I left entity topics in there instead of changing it to entity likes. Let me just run that again using entity likes and say overwrite. Yes, we'll overwrite. Yes, we'll overwrite. And let's check out these migrations. This could be, there could be two. I think there will be two. So we have entity topics, a messed up one, and then entity likes. So wait a second, entity topics, references, entities, and users. Yeah, we will get rid of this one. And let's check out the entity like. Okay, this looks good, but we're gonna have to change these fields to belongs to, just like we did previously. Belongs to. The ID is implied, and then we need the names of these schemas. So entity and user. And actually we've got to alias entity, and we've also got alias user, but that's not in the content context. Alias campsite dot accounts dot user. Okay, that should work. Entity topic is going to be basically the same deal. Entity topic, and then also topic, all in this content context. Then we're going to find field and change both of these to belongs to, and IDs are implied. Entity and topic. Okay, that should be correct. And we also actually have to change the schemas for topic and for user. All right, topic and user we'll hold off on. We're just we'll set up likes another day. But we've got to change topic and entity. Topic is going to have a many-to-many relationship, which is built into ecto, with entities. In other words, with content. It uses the entity schema and join through the entity topics table in the database. And ecto will know that this join through is going to use the entity ID and the topic ID in this table because that's a default and we didn't specify otherwise. We're going to need entity and topic. Then we're going to do the same in entity going the other way. So we're going to need entity and we're going to need topic. And we're also going to need users here, alias campsite dot accounts dot user, and we'll make a many-to-many of topics, and we'll use the topic schema, and we're going to join through that same entity topics table. So now entities will be able to get a list of all the topics that have been tagged with that entity, and topics will be able to get a list of all of the entities or all of the content that's been tagged with that topic. We're also going to need to make one more in entity, and that's going to be for likes, even though we're not going to set up the entire bit of that logic today. Entity likes, and that joins to users by user. Now let's look at our schemas, or our migrations, I should say. In each of these join tables, we're going to want to create a unique index on the combination of the two IDs. So that'll be create unique index entity topics on, we just give it a list and put both into it, entity ID and topic ID. The reason for this is because we can have any number of things tagged with the same topic, and we can also tag the same topic onto any number of different pieces of content, but we can't double tag a certain piece of content with a certain tag or triple tag it with that tag. That would just be silly. So these are unique in the combination of entity and topic IDs. We're going to do the same thing in our entity likes, except instead of it being topics, it's going to be users. So entity likes and user ID. Let's run those migrations. Entities does not exist, and that's because I misspelled it. So entities, and let's go back and check those schemas as well for the same. Actually, let's just check the entire project for that particular misspelling. Entities, all right. Okay, that should be all of them. All right, there we go. We'll reload in our IEX. Now let's open up our context and give this a try. So we've got our content here, and instead of preloading the entity alone, we're going to preload the entity with all of its topics, like so. So this gets the entity field from episode and then all of the topics from that entity field. And we'll recompile that. We'll recompile, and now we'll list our entities. And they have these topics, which are not loaded, not associated. And let's get one episode. The episode has an entity, and then inside the entity, it tried to preload them, or it did preload them, and there were 0. So that's a good deal. Now let's make a connection between one of the episodes and one of the topics. So we only have one episode, the awesome episode. And as far as topics, let's check another tab here. Topics, we have pattern matching and OTP. So we'll use pattern matching. This is topic number 1. So let's tag entity number 1 with topic number 1. We might have a helper for that, although I don't think we generated a context for entity tag or for entity topics. Let's check that out. Content.list entity topics. We do not have that. That's okay. We'll create a helper for ourselves in the context right now. Actually, I'll just minimize this. And let's put them way at the bottom after the topics. So we'll call this one AdTag. An AdTag is going to take an entity ID and a topic ID. And we'll create an entity topic. Change that, taking in an entity topic object that's blank, or schema that's blank, and an entity ID is going to be EID, topic ID is going to be TID. Then we'll insert this into the repo, repo.insert. I'm not sure if we've got access to this. Might have to include that. Recompile. We don't have that. Okay, no problem. Alias campsite.content.entity topic. Content.add tag entity number 1, topic number 1. Actually, this is not going to work because our entity ID and our topic ID are both nil. Reason for that is because we're a schema. So let's open up our schema, EntityTopic, and let's include entity ID and topic ID. Since we're using them directly, we've got to put them in here. Entity ID, topic ID, and we're going to do the same for like. Oh dear, not another of these. All right. Entity like, okay. And we need the entity ID and the user ID. Okay, let's give this another try. Recompile. And we'll get all the entity topics. That is not strange. That's not strange at all because we already created it. So we'll just create another one with the same rules. Add tag. So here we go. Entity ID 1, topic ID 1, and now let's get our episode. Now our episode includes our entity, and our entity includes topic pattern matching. Yay. The next question is, how do we show the topics? Since there's more than one, we'll have to do a little bit of logic in our episode show page. Actually, no, not the episode show. Let's look at the episode index for now. So topics, we have a row in our table, which is actually a column on our page for topics. And we want to display all the ones that we have. So let's see here. We have episode, that's length. Okay, then we'll make topic below that. And topic is going to be episode.entity.topics. Now that's going to be a list of items. We can't directly display a list, although we could inspect it. And it looks like the entity is not preloaded, and that is because even though we set it to preload on an episode, this is getting all episodes. So we need to actually put that preload on the list as well. So we'll open up the context and go to episodes.list. Okay, list episodes. There we go. And we need repo.preload entity. I hate it when that tooltip is too close. That's probably my single biggest annoyance with this this editor. I love everything else though. Entity and topics. All right. Okay, so that's our topics. We inspected it. That's not exactly what we wanted. So we'll just have to map out the text portion of that. So inspect episode.entity.topics enum.map. This is going to be a long line. Enum.map of the item.text and pass that to enum.join on comma space. We don't need that inspect anymore because these are just going to be a single string, which can be displayed without a problem. Looks good. Let's make it a bit easier to add topics. We'll go to content. All right, so we've got an add tag function, takes a couple of IDs and makes a tag. It's nice. It would be nicer if we had another one though that took an entity struct and an ID to make a tag. So we'll just define another version of it like so. So entity equals entity, and tag ID. So this will only match when the first parameter is an entity struct. And when that happens, we'll add tag entity.id and tag ID. So basically this function will just use this one. And then the next thing that would be nice to have would be if we had a function that works on anything that has an entity ID, like say an article or an episode or some other resource. So now we're going to be matching on an object that has an entity ID inside of it, and we'll save that match as EID. We don't need to save the whole entity anymore. And we'll call AdTag with EID and TID. And finally, we probably want to be able to just take tags by text, because we don't think tag number 5 onto something. We think tag pattern matching onto something. So in order to match this version, we're going to take any sort of entity. So they could have passed in an entity ID or an entity object, or struct I should say, or an episode struct or an article struct, any of those. We'll just, whatever it is, we'll match it as entity and we'll pass it along. Then we'll check to see if the second parameter is text. The way we do that is with a when guard. So when is binary. Binary is a string basically, topic text. Then we'll check to see if a topic is there first. So topic equals, we'll need to see if this topic text exists or not yet. So if we look for the topic ecto, and that's already in the database, then we want to get that topic and use its ID. If it's not, then we need to create it and use its ID. So we'll use a case here, case repo.get by topic and text of topic text. So if there's a topic of the text passed in, actually we'll do the nil case first. If there isn't one, then we need to create it. So that'll be topic object into topic dot change set text topic text, and then we'll insert that. And we don't want to get an OK back, because we're going to use this topic that has just been inserted. And if there is a match, then we're just going to use it. So topic, and then we've got our topic, and we use that to call add tag with entity and topic.id. So that will get the topic ID out of the text. Whether or not that one exists or not, then this entity gets passed on and dealt with this logic. Okay, let's give this a try. So we have our episode 1. Awesome. And I believe we have a bunch of topics, or we have 2 topics. So we've got a couple topics and only 1 episode. Let's make another episode. And this new episode is going to be called the meh episode. And slug is meh. Content is meh. And it's 5 seconds long. It's not really 5 seconds long. Here's the video URL. Submit that. So we have a couple of episodes now, and the meh episode has no topics. So now let's get the second episode. There we go, second episode. And using that, we're going to add a topic to it. So content.add tag, and we're going to pass it the episode, and we'll pass it the first tag. with pattern matching. Now let's try using the episode's entity instead of the episode itself. And we'll add the second tag. That also works. So we can use an entity or we can use an episode. Now we've only got 2 topics. We've only got pattern matching and OTP. Let's add more topics. So we'll add tag episode 2 and we'll say ecto. And close the paren. Undefined function, campsite topic, change set is undefined. Oh, I misspelled it. Topic.change set. All right, looks like that worked. Let's add another one. We'll add this one to episode 1. Phoenix 1.3. All right, that's a lot more convenient. Now we can tag content with topics just by using the string of the topic content itself and either the ID or the entity or the article or episode or whatever. Actually, let's just quickly copy over the adjustments we had to make to the episode in the context to articles so that we can see that in action. So let's find our list episode. We're just going to take this same preload that we used both here and in the get and put that on articles. So list articles. There we go. And get articles. There we go. And list resource. And get resource. Very good. Then we'll go back to the episodes, update episode, and we're going to copy this straight over as well. Update resource, update article. Paste that in there. Episode we already have, and resource, we'll do that as well. And finally is create. Create is going to be a little bit more of a pain. Create episode has these 2 big changes. Okay, create resource. We will paste this in here, and we're not going to use this line. That up there, and change this to resource. Create article, and there we are. Paste that in there, get rid of this line, pull that one down, and this is going to be an article. Let's recompile. Now to create an article and create a resource. That's a bunch of stuff that can't be blank. So let's just go here and create them. New article. Foo bar baz. Content.article change set. It did not create an article. Did create an entity. When I reloaded the page, it created another. That's a bit odd. Let's see if the update works. association, entity. Entity. Another typo. Okay. Let's get that article again. Entity ID. Update the article. All is good. Can we create a new one? We cannot. Okay, this is a bit odd. So let's just compare the creates for all of them. Create episode. So like that. Create resource is, wait a second, that's longer. Create episode, okay, entity. Change that, we add the entity ID. We didn't get rid of this. And I bet the same problem is there for the article. Article, yeah, we'll get rid of that. And now we should be able to create that article. And that looks like that worked. It did. All right, that was a bit of effort. Time to add topics to them. And we'll just add this and a topics to each. Article index. And topics. And in here we will add topics as well. Instead of episode, this is going to be article. Resource index. We'll do the same for resources. Topics. And wait, we didn't want to copy that. We wanted to paste in this one. And change episode to resource. Right, now we have topics on our articles, and we do still have some bad data on resources, so that's not going to work yet. We have plenty of entities to go around though. So articles, we're using entity 7, we're using 4, so we wasted 5 and 6. So we'll just set our resource page to entity number 5. And that's going to be content.get resource 1, and the change is going to be entity ID is now going to be 5. Excellent. That looks like that worked. So let's check it out. Yep. Okay. It is now easy to tag anything. And let's take advantage of that by tagging the Elixir forum. So we will get the Elixir forum. I don't remember. I think it was entity ID 5, but we'll just use the other method that we made. We'll say forum equals content.get resource. First one. There's only one resource. It was entity 5. That's fine. And now content.add tag to forum of community. Excellent. Let's add another tag of forum. Great. Now let's go to articles. And I guess we'll go with article number 2. We'll go with foo. And we'll tag that one with forum as well. Excellent. And if we look in our topics, there should just be one topic for forum. Okay, this has been a fairly long episode. I can take a bit of the blame since I made a few typos here and there, but I'd say we've made pretty good progress. Now we have 3 separate kinds of content that are all taggable in a unified way, and it wouldn't be hard at all to add a 4th or 5th type of content that also has this property, and it's not too difficult to add those tags. And furthermore, we can extend the same structure we've already set up for users to like pieces of content, and it all fits together pretty nicely. In part 2, we'll improve the forms so that many tags can be entered or In part 2, we'll improve the forms so that many tags can be entered and edited at the same time. And we'll also set up a view for each of the topics, and you can just see the items that have been tagged with that topic. And bit by bit, we'll grow some social networking features. Hope you've learned something from this episode, and if you're still here at the end of such a long episode, I'm sure you have. So please hit subscribe, tell your friends about Alchemist Camp, and until next time, code on.